Welcome back, everyone. This is Omni-Man86, and today we are going to be taking a look at my omnibus collection for the Ultimate Universe. So before we get into these individual omnis and the characters that they deal with, I wanted to make sure I started off with kind of a primer about the Ultimate Universe in general. So for most folks that have been reading Marvel Comics, you know that the main Marvel Universe in the comics is labeled as Earth 616. 616 has long been known to be the designation from the multiverse as far as the main continuity. Why they chose 616, I'm sure there's a story that I just don't know. But that is the story for the main Marvel Universe. The Ultimates Universe is Earth 1610. That is the designation that it received, and so it exists completely separate from the Marvel Universe, the main continuity. However, as you will see as you get into a lot of this, there are some stories that branch over them. Then there are some things dealing with the fate of the Ultimate Universe as you move further into some of the stories, which we'll talk about as we get a little bit more into some of the Miles Morales stuff here. And so, unfortunately, I can't really avoid spoilers with that kind of stuff. So if you don't want to know anything about the Marvel Universe, I'll try to flag some stuff. But inevitably with this and some of the books we're going to talk about, there are going to be some spoilers, just as a heads up. So to get things going, the first book that we're going to be talking about is The Ultimates. This is written by Mark Millar, with most of the artwork coming from Brian Hitch. Obviously, they have a lot of collaboration together if you've known anything about their work over the years. This follows the main superhero group in the Ultimates universe, which is ultimately called the Ultimates. How many times can we say the word ultimate? They are not known as the Avengers, at least not this particular group. We'll talk about that in a minute. And you can see that the main group for this does consist of Captain America, Thor, Wasp, Iron Man, Ant-Man, or in this case, Giant Man, and Hawkeye. So a lot of the main characters that you know from the normal Marvel Universe that started the Avengers are in play here, and this is a very different take on them. As you can see, lots of different costumes that are happening, a lot more modern. This run really kind of started in the 2000s, and so it's going to reflect some more modern takes on these characters. The other thing that you need to know as you get into this is that you need to not think about the main Marvel characters when you read this, because their personalities are very different. They are written very differently than the core Avengers. So as you come into it, if you're like, oh, this is a group, they're going to band together and they're going to have a great time, they're going to be friends and all this other kind of stuff, then that is not necessarily the case in here. Oh, look at that Black Widow. I forgot to mention her, creeping around all back there. So as you get into it, just as a heads up about that. So a little bit about this book. This series collects Ultimates number 1 through 13, Ultimates 2 number 1 through 13, Annual number 1, and this book has had 2 printings. This is the most recent printing of it. The original printing, I think, happened back in the early 2010s, and then this one just came out last year. So it is a pretty recent print. You can probably find it out there. I don't think it's quite disappeared yet, but it is something to probably take a look at if you're interested in. So this is the main cover here. This is the standard edition cover. And then over here on the side, you can see Ultimates logo. We've got a cool Captain America picture down there. And then, like a lot of Marvel Omnis, here on the back, you've got kind of this tiled display of different art from the covers, and you have the contents down here. You'll also notice this, parental advisory. This is something, again, if you're not used to these characters, or if you are used to like the main Avengers, these are going to read very differently for them. So as you get into it, don't be surprised if some things kind of, not necessarily freak you out, but you're like, oh, that's different. And then this retails for $100. So inside of this, like I said, you've got all those issues. Most of the artwork is done by Brian Hitch, so you get a lot of this artwork, which is right here on the cover. It's a really interesting read. If you like alternate takes on characters, it's a really great story to kind of jump into. Orients you with the Ultimate Universe fairly well, because As we're going to talk about here in just a minute, there are characters and groups that exist outside of this, but this is a really great start for the main core Ultimate Universe. And next up, we have Ultimate X-Men Volume 1. There is a Volume 2 coming. We'll talk about that here in just a minute, but this is Volume 1. This is the standard edition cover by Adam Kubert. This is primarily written also by Mark Miller, who did the Ultimates. Most of the artwork is done by Adam Kubert and Andy Kubert, but then there's also artwork from Tom Raimi, Issa Ribic, Aaron Lopresti, Chris Bachalo, Carrie Andrews, and David Finch. There are also a couple of issues in here written by Chuck Austin and also Jeff Johns, who you may know from DC, who did work for Marvel for a little while. And so this book collects Ultimate X-Men number 1 through 33 and the 1/2 issue, and then Ultimate War number 1 through 4. So like I said, this is a standard edition cover here. You've got some of the main X-Men characters here on the front. You've got the spine with the Ultimate X-Men logo over here with Charles Xavier looking like a badass here with his leather jacket in his wheelchair. So again, dealing with some very different versions of these characters than what you might expect from the normal Marvel Universe if you are familiar with those characters. You've got all the covers that are collected in here on the back. This little image down here is the direct market cover. So if you do see a version pop up with this, it is okay, because that is a cover that you can get on this. And then you can see on here, thrillingly new, shockingly different. That was, I think, kind of a unique tagline, or very apt tagline for a lot of these comics, because they were so different from their main continuity counterparts. You can see a lot of the credits here on the back. This one retails for $125, so a little bit bigger than the Ultimates book. This one has just had one printing, which just came out last year. And then coming in currently solicited, I believe, for February of 2024, there is going to be a volume 2 for this. So if you jump into this and like it, just know that there is another edition coming. So there's a lot more to read on top of this. All right, now let's get into what is arguably the most popular and well done run from the Ultimates universe, and that is the beginning of Ultimate Spider-Man by Brian Michael Bendis. So we're going to talk about kind of a couple of different eras from the Ultimate Universe with Spider-Man. Again, I'm going to have to get into spoilers a little bit, and so I'll try and give you a heads up as we get closer to that. But currently, there is Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1 and Volume 2. There is a Volume 3 coming out later this year, and I think there's definitely enough content for a Volume 4, and I think probably a Volume 5 as well. Bendis was on Ultimate Spider-Man for a very long time, and so one of I believe he and Dan Slott were kind of competing with who could write Spider-Man the longest. Dan Slott was over in the main continuity writing Spider-Man, while Bendis was over here in the Ultimate Universe doing his thing. And so here we've got Volume 1 and Volume 2, got some spines here featuring Spidey. Let's take a look at these covers here. So this is the standard edition cover. This is what they call like the first issue variant. There are 3 covers of this, and so you might see a few different ones out there, but just as a heads up whenever you look at it, this was the logo that they use. I feel like that looks very 2000s, but that was the Ultimate Spider-Man logo. So you've got Spidey here. It looks kind of almost like computer generated here with some artwork and like a real photo happening of New York behind the city here. Behind the city, good lord, that is the city. You know what I mean. So then here, you've already seen the spine. Let's take a look at the back of this bad boy. Here you can see all the covers. The thing I like about the covers is that it kind of gives you a heads up about what to expect coming up in the book. So the nice thing about the Ultimate Universe here is that you get to see a new take on a lot of these characters, not just the heroes, but also the villains. Like this ginormous green goblin-looking guy here. I wonder who he is. Weird. This guy with electricity coming out of his hands. I wonder who that is. This guy with a bunch of arms. Oh, look, we've got him in a few different issues. So you get to see a lot of these really popular Spider-Man characters because, as we all know, Spider-Man has one of the best rogues galleries in all of comics. And so there's a lot of unique stuff going on. Look at that. This guy looks like Spider-Man, except he's scary. I wonder what that's about. So lots of really cool stuff going on in here. This book has had two printings. The first one was, I think, in 2012, and then the second was in 2022. So you had 10 years in between these printings. The first one was out of print for a very, very long time. And for the longest time, we only had volume one, and that was all we had. So this is actually coming back for a restock, not a reprint, but a restock where basically Marvel is reissuing the standard cover and is making it available limited quantities. So if you are interested and you see it pop up and you have the opportunity to get it, you probably want to go ahead and do that. I think it is supposed to come out next month, so it's coming up very soon. So a lot of sites like cheap graphic novels and organic price books, I think will let you probably pre-order those. So you might want to jump on it if you are interested, because again, once this thing goes out, who knows how long it'll be before we get a reprint of volume one, especially since it looks like we are going to be progressing with the volumes keeping going. So this book, very simple, collects Ultimate Spider-Man number 1 through 39 and the 1/2 issue. They did a lot of these 1/2 issues. That was like a popular thing to do back then. So this is volume 1 here. And then we've got volume 2. Let's take a look at the cover on it. Again, multiple covers available for it. This is one of the covers from the issues itself. I like this kind of look to Spidey. Spidey's, shown, I think, a little bit younger, kind of scrappier. I feel like obviously over in the main continuity, he had grown up, he was an adult, he had a lot of adult things going on, and so I thought it was cool with this to be able to kind of get back to his roots as a kid and see what all he had going on in his life. Here we get to see a lot of these covers happening back here. Oh look, a big X. I wonder what that's about. Wonder if that ties into anything else going on. Get to see some other characters. Looks like we've got Captain America showing up here. We get to see some return of some other villains, some other new villains coming back, and get to see what's going on here. So this one collects Ultimate Spider-Man number 40 through 71 and Ultimate 6 number 1 through 7. Again, written by Brian Michael Bendis. Most of the artwork in here is by Mark Bagley. There is a little bit of work by Joe Quesada and also Trevor Hairsine. And both of these retail for $125. That's probably going to be kind of the standard price point for all of these coming out. They should all be very kind of similar in size. But there's a lot of really great stuff in here. Again, unique, fresh takes on Peter Parker Spider-Man, but still very familiar with the Peter that you like. This is probably the one, I think, one of the reasons it was so popular and did as well as it did is that even though the other Ultimate stories like Avengers and X-Men, Fantastic Four, things like that were very different, and they were fresh takes, they did deviate pretty wildly from what most people knew about them. And this one, I feel like, remained very true to Peter and who he is. Some of his stories get kind of changed up and with a twist on them as far as relationships and his friends and who he's involved with. But as far as who Peter is as a core character, I really do think Brian Michael Bendis understands that really well. And so it makes it a great introduction to Peter. If you are like, I've always wanted to read some Spider-Man, but there is so much. I don't have the time or the energy to read 60 years worth of Spider-Man history. These are a really great place to jump in. Like I said, you may end up with like 4 or 5 of these if you want to get the whole thing, but that's better than the probably 20 Omnis that exist for the regular the regular Marvel Universe Spider-Man, the 616 version, where there are 5 volumes just of the Silver Age so far, and we'll probably get more in the future. So this is definitely a place to come in to kind of get some of these stories, see them in a different way, a different light, but some really great stuff going on here. So let's jump forward and look at maybe a slightly different Spider-Man. All right, next up, we are going to be talking about Miles Morales Spider-Man. And so to get into that, I do need to talk about one omnibus that is out of print at this point. If you don't want any spoilers, if you don't want to know anything at all about where this character comes from and the story that leads up to his introduction, you're going to want to jump forward, and I'll provide some timestamps down below for you to be able to click on. But, so if you're hanging around, spoilers, one of the Omnis that is out of print is entitled Ultimate Spider-Man, Death of Spider-Man. Obviously, that can mean a lot of different things, but we're going to be talking about that a little bit as we talk about this character. So that one was published back in 2012, so it has been out of print for a very long time. I would imagine at this point, it's just going to stay out of print, and then that content will get rolled into the eventual Ultimate Spider-Man, maybe, I guess, Volume 5. There's a lot of content there, but I think they can fit all that in there. And And so I think that would just make sense instead of bringing that one out of print and then probably double dipping with the Ultimate Spider-Man once it gets there. So yes, Peter Parker dies in the Ultimate Universe. He is dead. And when that happens, that opens the door for this character, Miles Morales. And so at this point, no more spoilers. I'm going to kind of try and talk about it without spoilers moving forward. So now we have Miles Morales, the Ultimate Spider-Man, and let's talk about a couple of things with these Omnis and their editions first and foremost. So, number one, you'll notice that this is Miles Morales, the Ultimate Spider-Man. This one is called Miles Morales Spider-Man Volume 2. There is no Volume 1 on this. And they also have different titles. So, am I missing books? Is there another Volume 1 that needs to be in here? Like, what is going on? Well, I don't feel like Marvel does this very often, but they made some changes with these Omnis. So, this essentially serves as volume 1 to this. This is the original printing of this. It was printed this way with this cover and this spine, and then in whenever they went back to go do the reprints, it came back as Miles Morales Spider-Man Volume 1 with matching spines. So you are going to see some different versions of this on the shelf. Likewise, there was an original printing of this as well, and that one, I believe, was Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man. It wasn't Volume 2, but it did have a different printing as well. I'm sure I can probably pull that up and take a look at it. But so you also see a different version of that as well. So there's actually 4 different combination of ways that you could have the exact same story with essentially 1 and 2, depending on if you have the new or the old version of Volume 1 or the new and the old version of Volume 2. So with this is pretty much the extent of these versions. Both of these are the Brian Michael Bendis era. Sarah Pichelli was the primary artist on a lot of this kind of stuff, but then you also have artwork from David Maquez, Justin Ponzer, so lots of other folks kind of popping in, but again, Sarah Pichelli was the main artist on this. And this ushered in a new era for Spider-Man because it was a brand new Spider-Man. Very different from Peter Parker, completely different origin story, honestly different powers as well. There's some cool stuff in here that they're able to do with this. And so there's a lot of really cool stuff happening. The other thing I do want to talk about before we go too much further is that if you have the opportunity to grab this, like let's say you're in a shop somewhere, you see this on the shelf and it's available for sale, and you're like, oh man, I'm looking to get that. Let me grab that. I do want to issue one warning about this specific book. If you see this spine, then you know that it's the original printing, and you can pretty much count on having some spine issues. Take a look at this little bad boy here. So when you look in here, all these pages that are up should be glued down and attached to that bottom part. You see how they're kind of coming detached there. There was some kind of issue with the glue, with the binding on these books, and so it is extremely common that they all become disconnected from there. You can technically still read it, but obviously you run the risk of some pages falling out, and there are some easy ways to fix this. I'm actually going to have a video coming up very, very soon showing me repairing this book and another one that I just ordered with some binding issues. And so if you have any books that ever do this, I'm going to give you a little tutorial with how to fix that and make it be good as new. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at the cover of this bad boy. Obviously, this is a little bit thicker than the other one, but here you've got this shot of Miles Morales here in the city. I love this picture. This is really cool. The poster child for modern day Spider-Man stories. I think absolutely that's a great way to put it. A very fresh, updated take on the character of Spider-Man while still using it as a different character. See, we've got a different suit going on. We've got the black and the red as opposed to the red with mostly black and some blue. So a lot of really cool stuff happening with this character. So this book collects a few different things. We have Ultimate Comics Spider-Man number 1 through 28, and also 16.1. We have Spider-Men number 1 through 5. Wonder what that's about. Wonder why they called it Spider-Men. Cataclysm Ultimate Spider-Man number 1 through 3. Ultimate Spider-Man number 200, because they did some renumbering and jumping back and forth with the legacy numbering on this in a couple of different places. Miles Morales Ultimate Spider-Man number 1 through 12. And then some material from Ultimate Fallout number 4, which is where this character first appeared. So, you've got a couple of different versions of the story happening through here. And let's take a look at the back here. So, unlike the other ones, this does not have kind of a collage of the different covers. You've got this really cool shot here with Miles and Venom. We've got the contents over here on the side. A lot of different artists kind of worked on this, so you can see all the names there. And, it talks a lot about what's going on here in the book. This one retails for $125. The new printing also retails for that price as well. I believe you can still find it out there. Again, if you're interested, this is a good jumping on point. You don't necessarily have to know anything about Peter to jump into this. There are a few things from that run that do pop up in this, some characters that do carry over, but it's not the end of the world, and you can jump into this fresh to read it. But it is very satisfying to read all of the Ultimate Spider-Man and then jump over here to the Miles Morales run. Let's take a look at the cover for this one. This was a very recent printing. I like this cover here as well. No matter what universe Miles lives in, he's the king. The reason it mentions that is that Miles does come to the main Marvel universe. Not really going to talk about spoilers with that, how it happens, but if you're reading comics, you see that he's around, he's interacting with these other characters, so it's no secret that he exists in the main Marvel 616 universe now. So there are two Spider-Men, Peter Parker and Miles, in main continuity. And this book is kind of his first foray into that. So it's not really an Ultimates, but it spins out of the Ultimate Universe, so I thought it was important to include here. We see Miles and Gwen here, Spider-Gwen or Ghost Spider, depending on when you are reading her book. She went through a little bit of a name change. It talks about, it's got Black Cat, Spider-Gwen, a new Sinister Six, and then also Miles' role in Civil War II. So this has a few different things inside of here. This has Spider-Man number 1 through 21. Spider-Man number 234 to 240. Like I talked about, they did do some renumbering and going back to some legacy numberings on this. It has Spider-Gwen number 16 through 18, the B story. It has Spider-Man 2 number 1 through 5. And then it also collects the one-shot of Generations, Miles Morales Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man. That was a cool series they did where they had these one-shots of these characters where maybe there were different versions of them. So it was, Thor and Jane Foster Thor. It had Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson Captain America. So all of those did some really cool stuff, and so this was one of them. So, again, some really cool stuff in here. Miles is a very unique character, very different from Peter. He is his own person, and he is his own Spider-Man, and so it's a really great place to kind of jump in. There's so many good things they end up doing with the story, and Bendis, again, does such a really great job of writing him through this. But also differentiating himself from Peter. Like, while I talked about earlier, I think Bendis really understood Peter and who Peter is and his character. He also very much understands Miles and does a great job of creating this character from nothing. So if you're interested in a new, fresh take at a younger Spider-Man, this is a great place to come in and check it out. And with that is my omnibus collection of the Ultimate Universe. There is another Omni that I did not talk about that is out of print, and that is Ultimate Avengers Omnibus. It's been out of print for a very long time. I think their first printing was like in 2012. So it's been, 11 years at this point, and it still has not come back. So who knows if they're going to do a reprint of that or not, but potentially one day we might see that. There are also some other characters that have not had Omnis. There's enough content, I believe, for a Fantastic Four Omnibus. There are some other characters that kind of pop up where they can maybe combine some things into another Omni, but there are, a lot of different characters. It was a very fleshed out Marvel universe, not quite as deep a bench as the main 616, but the Ultimate Universe 1610 was its own thing, had a lot of really great stuff happening, and so there's definitely room to expand the content coming out of these. Like I mentioned, I think we'll definitely see a lot more of the Ultimate Spider-Man, because I think it had probably the longest run out of anything, and so there's a lot of really great stuff that exists in this universe. And so if you are looking for an introduction into a Marvel universe, maybe not the main one, and you don't want to have to deal with all the history, all the information from those other universes, this is a great place to come in and kind of jump in. You get to learn about these characters, basically the equivalent of the Avengers. You get X-Men, you get Spider-Man, Fantastic Four show up in here. You get a new Spider-Man. Lots of really great stuff going on. Here we've got 6 Omnis, and we can cover pretty much everything that is out at this point, and there's more to come. So if you're interested in a new Marvel universe, this is a great place to go to. If you've not already, definitely subscribe. Got some more content coming your way. As always, I love feedback. I love for you to jump in with what you're interested in, maybe some videos you'd like to see. Drop some comments. Have you read any of the Ultimate stuff before? And if so, what are some of your favorite ones? What did you like? What did you not like? And then just keep it up. Thanks to everyone. We just hit 150 subscribers this past week. So thanks to all of you for kind of being the first subscribers on the channel. I love being able to talk to all of you. And so keep it up, keep it coming, and look forward to talking to you again next time.